right now. I'm going live. Year 7, tune in for topic 5, the Roman Empire topic 5. That's what I'm doing right now. And we are looking at the expansion of the Roman Empire. This is what we are going to discuss. We've already done the first topic. We looked at how can we know about history. That's what we did the first time. The second topic, we looked at archaeology as a very important tool which can be used by historians to reconstruct the past. And we learned that archaeology, in fact, is a science and therefore very important when we want to understand life, especially in prehistoric epoch. Very important archaeology. And then we looked at, can you always trust historical sources? How reliable are historical sources? And lastly, we looked at the origin or the beginning of the Roman Empire. Right now, we want to move a step ahead and look at the expansion of the Roman Empire. We'll start by looking at the word expand. What does the word expand mean? That's very important in understanding today's lesson. Expansion. What is expansion? Expansion is to grow bigger, is to increase in size, is to increase in size. So we are talking about the growth of the Roman Empire, how big it became, how big it became right from the city of Rome. We've looked at it, how it was founded and became the most influential city in the world at that particular time. And even we pointed out today, still has that influence. The headquarters of the Roman Catholic Church, where the Pope still lives in Vatican, Rome. So still a very important city. But today's lesson, we are looking at how the Roman Empire expanded, how it grew to become one of the largest empires in the world. That's what we are going to analyze in today's lesson. And we are going to have just a brief introduction by saying that the Roman Empire grew to around 1.3 million square miles, one of the largest empires in the world, 1.3 million square miles, becoming one of the biggest empire in the world. We pointed out, extended to Africa, particularly North Africa. You'll be talking about present-day Tunisia and Egypt, which were conquered by the Romans, present-day Tunisia and Egypt, which were conquered by the Romans. So we have that influence of the Romans. We have that influence of Moscow growing to become one of the biggest, growing to become one of the biggest empire, 1.3 million square miles, and it contained 21% of the world's population. So in population, one of the biggest, that's what we understanding. Then in size, one of the biggest. Then in influence, very influential. We quoted one historian saying that when Rome sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold. When Rome sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold. In a nutshell, the impact of the Roman Empire. So that will form our brief introduction of the expansion, how it grew to become one of the greatest empires in the world. And then we look at the stages. We are going to look at the expansion, and we are going to look at the stages of the expansion of the Roman Empire. It's going to be divided into 4 stages. The expansion of the Roman Empire is going to be divided into 4 stages. And step by step, we are going to analyze the expansion of the Roman Empire. Step by step, we are going to analyze the expansion of the Roman Empire. And therefore, let's embark on stage one. Let's embark on stage one. And stage one is the most important stage. Stage one is the most important stage. This is the stage we are saying Rome controls Italy. Stage one is one we are saying Rome controls Italy. Very important because it takes over the whole country, takes over the whole country. Therefore, stage one, Rome controls Italy, taking over the whole country of Italy, conquering the nearby tribes and the nearby cities, conquering the nearby tribes and the nearby cities, and therefore annexing the whole country, annexing the whole country, and therefore Rome controls Italy. That is the most important stage. The conquered people were left to take over their land, and then perhaps they were forced just to become the allies, friends of the Romans, the allies of the Romans. So we have the stage one. Rome controls Italy. That is the most important stage because always you have to have the support of your own. Therefore, taking over the whole of Italy, taking over the whole of Italy, that is stage one, very important stage in the conquest and expansion of the Roman Empire. Conquest and expansion of the Roman Empire. So after conquering it's Italy, now Rome has to expand and conquer foreign countries. It has to expand and conquer foreign countries. And then we are going to look at the first important conquest. All these countries that were conquered abroad became Roman provinces. These countries that were conquered abroad became Roman provinces. And we are going to look at the first countries to be conquered, and Carthage. We are going to look at Carthage. And where was Carthage? First of all, before we discuss the reasons why the Romans conquered Carthage, we want to know where Carthage was. It's important to locate it so that we're able to know and perhaps look at the reasons and also look at the events of the wars, the three of them. So, where was Carthage? And we want to state from onset that Carthage was in North Africa, that is the present day Tunisia. North Africa, present day Tunisia. And what could be the reason why the Romans would advance into Africa and take over Carthage? There must have been a reason for the Romans advancing into North Africa and taking over Carthage. And that the reason was they wanted to control the lucrative trade. And this lucrative trade was around the Mediterranean Sea. Therefore, that was the issue, that was the conflict. They wanted each of these countries to be able to control the lucrative trade. So we have the three wars with Carthage, and historians have given them the name the Punic Wars. Historians have given them the name the Punic Wars. So the first war, Rome wins and defeats Carthage. Carthage is humbled down, conquered, subdued by the Romans. In the First Carthaginian War, we have that result where Carthage was subdued. Then in the Second War, we have Hannibal. one of the greatest Carthaginian general now, coming with his forces now, trying to outdo the Romans in this particular war. Nearly Hannibal would have defeated the Romans, but at long last, the Romans defeated Hannibal. But it was one of the greatest battles between Carthage and Rome, And therefore, we have the Second Carthaginian War, ferocious war, very fierce battle between Hannibal the Great and the Romans, between Hannibal the Great and the Romans, and still the Romans come out victorious in the Second Punic War. And in the Third Punic War, definitely Rome wins over and takes North Africa from Tunisia extending to Egypt. We have the Romans now taking control of North Africa. Therefore, across the Mediterranean Sea into Africa, the second stage of conquest. And the results now, most of the Carthaginians were taken in slavery, and the Romans took over land, and Carthage was the first Roman province. The second stage is very important also because we have the first Roman province abroad, which is going to be ruled by the governor at that particular time. Therefore, the first Roman province at that particular time. The Carthaginian Wars, or the Punic Wars, if you like, historians have described them as the Punic Wars. Therefore, we have that being very important when we're discussing about the Romans, very important to remember. And at this particular time, we are going to look at the third stage. And then the Romans want to control the whole of Europe. The Romans want to control the whole of Europe. In the third stage, now they want to take over the European continent, and they're going to conquer several countries in Europe at that particular time, and they're going to perhaps take over Spain, one of the countries in Europe where the Romans were able to conquer, fight and conquer. We are going to have them taking over modern France. That is one of the countries the Romans were able to take over. We're going to have them take over Germany, one of the countries. So the third stage is when they try to take over and control the continent of Europe, are very important in this particular time. So the third stage also very important because they're going to be the masters of Europe at that particular time. So we have that important third stage where the Romans are going to become the masters of Europe. And the fourth stage, now Augustus Caesar, we've looked at him, very important, takes over at this particular time, more conquest, more modernization, expanding and annexing more land in Europe at that particular time. So we have a great conquest when Augustus Caesar comes in. And we remember one quote from him. He said, I found when Rome was a city of clay, I've left Rome a city of marble, leaving a great legacy, leaving a great legacy behind. So the fourth stage are very important. So you look at the expansion of the Roman Empire, we have the first stage, we have the second stage, we have the third stage, and we have the fourth stage. So those are the milestones in the expansion of the Roman Empire, the milestones, or if you like, the landmarks in the expansion of the Roman Empire. So the four phases are very, very important. So Rome grows to become one of the biggest empires. And we said grew so big so that it was not easy to manage it. And we're going to have one emperor who was very wise and is going to divide the empire into two. Emperor Diocletian is going to divide the empire into two, the one in west and the one in east. So we have the big divisions now in the Roman Empire. So expanding so great, so much, so that it was ungovernable. You could not govern it. So much so that you could not govern it. So that is also important to remember. And we had great emperors, and perhaps one of them is Emperor Hadrian, who built the great Hadrian Wall that separated the Romans from the people they regarded as primitive, the people who were not civilized. So we have that wall built to separate them from the people they viewed as being uncultured during the Hadrian's reign in Rome at that particular time. So we have some of the developments in Rome at that particular time. Then perhaps in a nutshell, we want to look at some of the reasons why expand. Why expand the benefits from the expansion of the Roman Empire? What did they gain from perhaps taking almost the whole world? What are some of these benefits? Why did they do that? That is also important to think, to look at what what benefited them. One, will have people paying taxes to them, and that will bring more income to the Romans. We remember the areas that had conquered, they could pay taxes to the Romans. And then these areas, number two, surplus population will be settled in these areas. So some of the Romans were taken to these areas where they were settled so they could settle their surplus population there. Number three, they got more land. They got more land, and that is very important. Land is very important resource for the Romans, so they got more land, and then they're going to get resources. That is things like minerals the Romans acquired in these countries they had conquered. So that is also a benefit to the Romans. They were able to get resources from this country. And also one will say the Romans became famous. We now will know them. Everybody in the world will now know them. The Romans became very famous after these conquests. So it is also important to remember the fame acquired, that they were great warriors and they had taken over the world. They got famous, and perhaps this conquest was just a symbol of prestige and status for the Romans. The more you conquer, the more prestigious is, the more the glory. So the more conquest you do, the more glory that you get as a country. So a symbol of prestige and glory to the Romans as an empire. So the conquest itself was very, very important to the Romans. That's why they wanted to at least conquer the whole world. So the Roman Empire expanding into four phases. the Roman Empire expanding into 4 phases to perhaps take over and control almost the whole world, perhaps to take over and control the whole world. Remember, taking quite a long time, as the Englishmen said that Rome was not built in a day. Rome was not built in a day. Took the efforts of these emperors to make Rome what it is and what it was at that particular time. So a lot of efforts from these emperors to make it one of the greatest empires in the world. So the expansion of the Roman Empire, the expansion of the Roman Empire, land, they got a lot of land, population, they were able to become one of the largest empires with a lot of population and very powerful, very influential. As one historian has coined the phrase, we say, when Rome sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold. When Rome sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold. So we are finishing to look at the expansion of the Roman Empire. We are finishing to look at the disadvantages, the expansion of the Roman Empire. But perhaps in a nutshell, what are the disadvantages of having such a big empire? What could have been some of the disadvantages? I just list two. It was not easy to manage all these big provinces. We remember the conquered areas became the Roman provinces. No, so to administer these provinces was very difficult. And then civil wars were the norm. Civil wars were the norm in these places which had been conquered by the Romans. Therefore, we have civil wars becoming the order of the day in these particular provinces. So the expansion of the Roman Empire, how did it grow? How did it grow? That is what we attempted to understand in these lessons. How did the Roman Empire grow into a huge empire in history, the one we know it today? I end my lesson today by urging more people, especially year 7, to subscribe to my channel for more historical series. We are looking at the Roman Empire. This is the 5th historical series. So let's have more people subscribing. Thank you. God bless you. We see you next lesson, the 6th lesson. So important.